Hello, my beautiful and courageous friends. It's Natalie Kelly, the TBI coach. And today I'm here with Dr. Sam Berne, who's a behavioral optometrist from Santa Fe, New Mexico. And thank you so much for being here with us today.
When the waves came and when the storm raged, found myself falling into the ground. When the wind blew, that's when it fell through, and I don't know how to turn it around. I know there's more to me than the wreckage you see. There's more to be. I'm still on the journey. I'm still on
Sam has so much background and knowledge and information about the visual processing system and the brain and how it works. And I actually met you 2 years ago when you were teaching a class on vision and the brain. And I learned so much. And so I'm really excited to have you here today to share it with everybody else.
Yes, I'm glad to be here. Thank
Good. Maybe you could start by telling us your experience with working with brain injury and your background and what you've done for people with brain injuries.
Sure. So first of all, behavioral optometrist, which is what I've studied, and I'm a doctor of optometry. What we do is we specialize in a more holistic approach to helping people with their eyes and vision. And I've developed a process which is a form of physical therapy for the eyes. And when I first went into practice in Philadelphia, I couldn't get any patients when I opened my office. So very early on, I went to a couple of hospitals, and what I did is I offered to the physiatrists in the outpatient clinic if I could do some my physical therapy on these traumatic brain injury patients. And they had double vision, they had balance problems, memory issues, and the regular eye doctors just couldn't handle them. So within 3 months, I was getting such incredible results. And so I was hired by a lot of the hospitals in that area. It was a very allopathic, medically oriented city, Philadelphia. So that kind of started me off on working with traumatic brain injury and vision. And then I started doing some research, and I also have written articles and books about it. And it's been over 30 years that I've been, involved in TBI and vision.
Wow. So you do have such an extensive background.
Mm-hmm.
I think when most people think about brain injury, they don't even think about vision and how that can be affected. And can you explain to us why vision is such a prevalent issue for people with brain injuries? Why is that so affected? How are they connected? What kind of issues do people generally have?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing is when you go to an eye doctor, they base their exam on the 20/20 eye chart at distance. That's actually not your vision, it's your eyesight. So 20/20 is seeing a 1/3 inch letter at 20 feet. Vision is how the eyes and the brain and the body work together. So it's a very dynamic process. And when you've had a bump on the head or a whiplash or some trauma to the head area, it begins to affect how the muscles and nerves control our visual skills. So our visual tracking, our visual focusing, our visual coordination. And so our visual system is like our GPS tracker. It basically tells us where we move in space. So if there's been some trauma to the brain, then it begins to affect how we aim our eyes, how we focus our eyes, and then that affects the processing part of our brain, our memory, our problem solving. And then of course, it's also going to affect our equilibrium, our balance, our orientation in space. So this physical therapy that I do for the eyes is so perfect for helping people redevelop their visual skills again and connect it to their brain and body.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I was so fascinated by in your class was embryologically, you explained a little bit about how physically the eyes and brain are connected.
Mm-hmm. So if we look at 2 weeks after conception, we actually see these little bulges growing out from the brain, the optical vesicles. These are actually the eyes. We also see it with the vestibular system in the ears. Also, they grow out a little later. But the point is that all eye tissue is really brain tissue.
So
when we work with the eyes, we're really working with the extension of the brain. And I kind of say that the eyes are the frontal brain, actually, except they're out here. And again, they're so interconnected that as you start stimulating and working with the eyes, it's going to have a profound effect on the brain.
Yeah.
For sure.
I kind of got this image of a snail with antennas.
Yes.
Because they're just so connected, you can't really separate the brain and the vision. And that part I just found so fascinating.
Yeah, I would say a distinction in allopathic care and behavioral optometry is that we're looking at the eyes as an interrelated, interconnected part of the body. And it reflects our systemic health, our energetic health. You know, I've studied Chinese medicine, and we know that the liver rules the eyes in Chinese medicine. So if you're dealing with toxicity issues, it's probably going to affect the eyes at some level. I've also studied craniosacral therapy. So I know that how the bones interface with the skull and how it affects the cranial rhythm of the brain has a profound effect on the eyes, the eye circulation, the eye coordination. So I've looked at all these interrelated, interconnected systems, and I'm looking at it from a functional point of view. Again, what I learned in school allopathically is that we just looked at structure, anatomy, and we looked for disease, which are all important things. But I'm looking at vision from a more functional place and how the eyes connect to the brain and the body and how we can integrate all of those senses in our ability to process information.
So is craniosacral therapy something that you recommend for people with brain injury, and how does that affect the healing process?
Well, first of all, any trauma to the body, what ends up happening is we tend to cloister or protect that part of ourselves as a defense strategy. But that tissue becomes very paralyzed and it becomes disconnected from the rest of ourselves. And so shock and trauma is a very interesting adaptation that our body makes. And so when we start kind of encouraging, say, something through craniosacral therapy, because what we're doing there is we're connecting to the person's own cranial rhythm, and they are discovering, they are working at their own pace about releasing the shock and trauma as a first step, and then getting things more lined up, more circulation, more flow. You know, the fluidity is so important in our eyes and our brain, but when we have a shock, that fluidity kind of goes away. And so we go into the shock and trauma situation. So it's very important that you go to a very trained cranial person who's done a lot of their own healing, because we all have shock and trauma. Just coming out of the birth canal is going to be a new experience. So as the therapist is very attuned to their own system, then they can help a person with traumatic brain injury kind of heal their own shock and trauma. And it's very important that you do that at the pace of the person, of the client, that the therapist isn't going at their pace. But if those dynamics are in place, craniosacral is a great way to help remove some of the shock and trauma. And that's the first step, in my opinion, in healing. Because once you start removing the defense strategies, then the person can discover and reconnect to their own biology, their own biological health for healing, whether it's the eyes, the body, whatever it is. So but it is a great therapy early on to help a person kind of move through some of the shock and trauma that we're invariably going to have.
That makes so much sense. It makes so much sense because, you know, we move into that freeze response, and the sympathetic nervous system is so activated, it's hard to, you can't heal from that place. You need to be in the more balanced nervous system to create the healing of the body.
Yeah, so let me talk a little bit about that, because in the brain we have the brainstem, which is our reptilian response, and then we have our mammalian response, and then we have our prefrontal cortex response. When we've had a traumatic brain injury, our brain reverts to that reptilian fight, flight, or freeze response. And there's actually a body of work that I've introduced called the primitive survival reflex therapy. And a lot of occupational therapists know about this. Basically, it's movement patterns that help us soften the reptilian response in our brain. And then when that happens, then we can move more into an empathic nature in terms of our own response on the nervous system. And you're right on about the sympathetic, parasympathetic response. A lot of people that I've worked with in traumatic brain injury, when I measure their biochemistry, I do a lab test on them, invariably they're in adrenal burnout. And partly is because their body is still in that response of fight, flight, or freeze from the trauma. So it's so interrelated and interconnected. And what happens on a vision level when we're so into the sympathetic response is we start tunneling our vision. and we start over-focalizing, but then what happens, we shut off our vestibular system as well, which is part of our GPS for balancing. So part of my work is helping people get more into the ambient vision, into their peripheral, so that there's a balance between the central and the peripheral. But it's very scary to go back into the peripheral because we're more open. But if we can develop that peripheral vision again, our depth perception gets better, our balance gets better, our memory gets better. So the peripheral vision, and this is where I use prisms and color therapy, we can go into that if you want, to kind of encourage people and invite people to go back into their periphery.
Wow, that's great, because that is one of the really central issues people would have with brain injury is the peripheral vision and the central vision stop communicating with each other. I know for myself, I can either sort of focus on a detail or I can see the bigger picture, but I can't do both. And for example, like driving a car, I'd have to look at the driver's license in front of me and follow. So integrating that peripheral vision is really important, isn't it? It seems like it's a common issue.
It's huge because, first of all, a lot of people with traumatic brain injury suffer some form of double vision.
Yep.
And what that means is one eye is aimed here and the other eye is aimed here. So I've lost my ability to coordinate and aim both eyes together. And I always say we can look through a hole, H-O-L-E, or we can see the hole, W-H-O-L-E. And one of the easiest ways to get back into the peripheral vision is actually primarily feel your body first. Like you were talking about these weighted vests. If you feel your body, feel your sit bones, feel your feet, like really kind of somatically get back into your body and feel your body first, then the peripheral vision will open up naturally. So that's one of the first things we do with people is really help them reconnect to body awareness.
Because that's one of the things you lose when you lose your peripheral
That's right.
vision. Jacob Lieberman, the author of Light, the Medicine for the Future, I know you know that book, talks about when you don't have peripheral vision, it's like a tree without roots. You know, you don't have a sense of where you are, you feel like you're falling over all the time, there's no relationship with anything else in space. And so it's getting back to that feeling of like, this is my body, this is where I am.
Yes, and that's primary.
That can open the peripheral vision.
Exactly. Feeling, seeing. Because the peripheral vision is our intuitive vision, it's our creative vision, it's our receptivity. So it tells us a lot, but you brought up a point about light. So one of the things, back to when I was at the hospitals in Philadelphia, is I began applying different colors of light to the eyes and to the retina, and what would happen is the peripheral vision would start to enlarge. Because what happens when we go under stress is our retina cells begin to desensitize to light. Again, it's another stress response. The sympathetic nervous system says, whoa, too much light, I'm going to close down my photoreceptors. So certain frequencies, color, visible spectrum of color therapy actually helps reawaken those photoreceptors, which then is another very gentle way of opening up the peripheral vision. So color therapy is another kind of component in my physical therapy approach.
Color therapy it's been phenomenal for me. And I did the colored lights where I was looking at a green light for 10 minutes a day. And in a week's time, maybe 10 days, my peripheral vision had doubled. So that was amazing. And then wearing the colored glasses creates the same effect. I know when I put them on, my peripheral vision just instantly opens up.
Yeah, you know, if you think of the red end of the spectrum, that develops more of the sympathetic nervous system, and the green, blue, indigo, violet kind of relaxes the nervous system. So that's where the field opens up. But you know, I'm working on a new book, and the book is about the damaging effects of blue-white light on the computers. And this blue-white light, which is on our phones, it's on our tablets, basically starts to shut down our melatonin. And melatonin is very important as an anti-cancer agent. So a lot of people's sleep gets affected from looking at those blue-white devices, say after 6 or 7 o'clock at night. And also, if you've had cataract surgery and the plastic lenses they put in, they don't block the blue-white light either. That blue-white light can damage your macula. So there's a whole thing about what colors to use, when to use them. And so I'm really teaching people now how to use color therapy based on different situations.
It's so profound. It's like a vitamin, you know, we didn't even know, who knew that like the colors were like a vitamin, we really need them. It's actually been one of the challenges for me is functioning in the winter where everything was white, the snow was white, the sky was white, and I had to leave because of the lack of color. I'm pretty convinced to a place where I could function better.
Yes, that's so true because we're made of color, we're made of light, and light is a food. And there's actually a term called malillumination, like malabsorption. And so it's like malnutrition. We're not getting the light, we're not absorbing it. Our pineal gland, our hypothalamus, you know, we all need light as a source of food, and it balances our nervous system, endocrine system, our fluid body. So I can relate to that. And in the northern climates, seasonal affective disorder, SAD, is very common for people because they're not getting enough light into their body.
Malilluminated.
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 Yeah.
So I want to go back to what you said about the difference between vision and seeing.
Okay.
And this is one of the things that makes the issues with brain injury so hard to diagnose, I think. You go to the eye doctor, my vision's better than 20/20, and yet I struggle with reading, I struggle with seeing. It's like there's a disconnect between my eyes seeing something and my brain interpreting it. It feels like there's something just broken there, like it doesn't go from here to here.
Sure.
So how, you know, with somebody with that situation, where would they go to get diagnosed? What kind of helpful therapies allow the person to go from vision to seeing?
Okay. So first of all, sight, which is the 20/20 reading, is a very static measurement. It's not, you know, vision. Vision is, again, those visual skills of tracking, focusing, visual coordination. There is an organization called NORA, Neurodevelopmental Rehabilitation Association, and they actually specialize in traumatic brain injury and vision. So you could go there. Certainly you could contact me, www.drsamburn.com, because I'm probably one of the leaders in the field of traumatic brain injury and vision, so I could maybe direct you. But a regular eye doctor just isn't going to be able to diagnose it because they're not doing the tests. And actually, there are checklists that you can look at to diagnose yourself. If you skip words, if you lose your place, if you have to cover one eye, if you get double vision, you have a vision problem. It's very simple in that way. And so now you're seeking a more holistic eye doctor because a regular eye doctor is, again, focused on looking for regular disease and measuring the 20/20 eyesight. Sight is not vision. Sight is a component of vision. Vision is dynamic. It's a learned and developed skill. If you have a traumatic brain injury, the visual skills could be impeded. So you're looking for a rehabilitation program. Think of it like physical therapy, but it's physical therapy for your eyes.
So you're talking about the eye exercises, the Brock string, the Marston ball, those kind of eye exercises, and I think that you've got a lot of other tools that you bring into those. Is that what you're talking about for physical therapy?
Yes, and I'm not a cookbook person. I'm a very process person. So when I evaluate somebody, and by the way, I'm doing practitioner programs now, so I'm teaching others my method, is that it's very important to meet the person where they are. So you mentioned the Brock string. That's a string where you look at some beads. A lot of people are not ready to do that at the beginning. It may be that they need to do some craniosacral therapy. They may need to work with reconnecting their vestibular system with their visual system in terms of balance and body midline. So in other words, working more with the gross motor for a while until that gets foundational again. And then working with the fine motor, which is the eyes. It really doesn't do much good if you jump into the fine motor things if a person is not ready to do that. And most people with brain injury, they're not ready to go right into something like the Brock string.
Yeah, that's what I found. I'm still working on it. It's been 5 years. I would do, 30 seconds and then sleep for 3 hours.
Wow.
And that's just not a life. So it's been really hard to apply the therapy that has been recommended.
Yes.
And what I've been told is you have to keep pushing it because that's how the brain creates the connections, is if you just keep doing it and keep pushing it. But I sense that there's probably some balance between pushing the brain to that level of fatigue and allowing it to rest and heal on its own.
Well, I would say that I have this saying that we need to rest and settle 90% of the time, and we need to work 10% of the time.
I like that.
Because in the rest and settle, that's where our system can integrate and digest and nourish and replenish. What I find with a lot of rehab programs, it's too pushy. And that actually just doing a little bit and then allowing a person's system to go, okay, how do I integrate this? How do I work with this? That actually, in my book, is much more effective than pushing, pushing, pushing. Our brain has an incredible capability of rejuvenating and creating new pathways. So both. And the neuroplasticity, which also affects the eyes because the eyes and brain are one, it needs to be done, in my view, in a very gentle, a very slow-paced, integrated way. And again, that 90-10, 90% rest and settle, 10% activity, that's worked really well in my work.
Beautiful. I love that formula. It's a great formula for life, actually.
That's how I live it. That's my
awesome.
life. Because, you know, as a healing practitioner, if I'm depleted and I'm trying to work with somebody who's already depleted, I'm not going to do any good for them. So what I've learned is I have to stay really connected in here, and also that I have to be in that rest and settle so that when I come in, then I'm really able to tune in and say, okay, this is what's needed here.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Now, I know you also use aromatherapy as a way to, I'm imagining, settle the nervous system and allow the system to heal. What kind of oils and how does that work for people with traumatic brain injury? What kind of oils would you use for them?
So aromatherapy is a huge business these days, and everybody is getting into it. It's a big industry. And so the folks that I work with a very small company. I don't do multi-level marketing, and I'm looking at the highest, purest oils that I can get. And I also, as you know from my vision work, I'm kind of out of the box because there's many different views on aromatherapy and how to use them. And I teach classes on how to work with them. But what I would say is that, say an essential oil like violet, it's from the flower violet, is a wonderful essential oil that helps relieve shock and trauma. It's very gentle. In fact, she's called the Queen of Sensitivity. I use it a lot with kids. Another medicinal essential oil that I like to use is cedarwood atlas, which is a tree essence. So it's supportive for the adrenals and is very grounding. Later on, once a person gets used to the oils, we actually use a few of them around the face that actually oxygenate and hydrate the eyes better. Sweet fennel, saffron, carrot seed, frankincense. Those are wonderful oils to put around the eyes. You don't want to get them in the eyes that are burned. But if you start getting any skin sensitivity, coconut oil takes that away right away. And you can also revert to, if you get any skin sensitivity, put it on the soles of your feet. But they are very potent medicines because of the oxygenating and hydrating qualities of them. So when there's more oxygenation, just generally in the body, it pushes the metabolic waste away from the tissues. So you get some release. And it isn't just always chemical release, but it can also be emotional release, energetic release. So my advice would be to find a really well-trained aromatherapist and kind of work with them. And you know, you're happy to work with me. I'm happy to help people with that. Because like anything else, you need to really learn how to maximize and use these very potent medicines in the most effective way. And if you do that, you're going to have great results.
Now, if somebody wanted to work with you, would they need to come to Santa Fe, or do you offer any phone services?
Well, we just got done doing a 4-week teleconference, and there were people from all over the world part of that. And if you go to my website, you can see my events page, and I'm traveling a bit. Skype sessions, or you know, depending on your area, maybe there's a practitioner that I've trained that you could go to. But I would be very selective, especially in eye care, who you go to. That's really, really important, because we're not talking at a basic level of 20/20 eyesight and eye health. These folks don't need that. They need a functional, rehabilitative approach to healing vision through the physical therapy activities. And that, if they get that, whoa, you can have amazing results with it.
Great, good. And once again, Nora, NMRA, is the place that they would go to find somebody who is qualified.
That's right, Neurodevelopmental Rehabilitation Association. I think it's nora.cc. If you can't find it, just email me. We're happy to talk with you about that. But there's a group of eye doctors in that organization who would be equipped to be able to help.
Great, thank you so much. One last question.
Okay.
If somebody you loved suffered a traumatic brain injury, what kind of advice would you give them?
I would begin by helping them learn more about self-regulation. So what I mean by self-regulation is, how can I master my stress level, my shock and trauma, my reaction to the trauma? And I would have it processed probably again through the body, through some somatic re-education. Peter Levine's work is really good. The Craniosacral work is really good. I'm a continuum teacher, and continuum movement is a wonderful way to help people heal their trauma. And that works with sound and breath and the fluid body. It was started by a woman named Emily Conrad, and I'm one of her teachers. So continuum movement is another way. So I would start there, and then because of my specialty in vision, I would begin to help people heal their ability to use their vision outwardly in a very gentle way. I would look at diet and nutrition. I would look at other support systems, whatever is needed on an emotional level. And so with those supports, I think that a person can hundreds, thousands of people I've helped over the years. I know the formula. And it's a little different with each person because some person needs a little bit more of this, a little bit more of that. But you know, if you're an advocate and say, okay, I'm going to take charge, and this is the people and the things you need to do, I think definitely people can heal from this. There's no doubt in my mind. There's no doubt. And it's just finding the avenue, the track.
Yeah, absolutely. Neuroplasticity is an amazing thing, and you've seen it in action for a long time. Yeah. So you've seen people get 100% better?
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I had a lady recently who was in a car accident. She's 70 years old, lost her ability to drive. When she came in, she could barely walk because she couldn't balance.
Yeah.
And I just ran into her on the hiking trail.
Oh my God, that's great.
And I said, how you doing? She says, I'm hiking, I'm driving. Thank you so much, Dr. Berne, for all the help that you gave me.
Wonderful.
So it took about 3 months of doing all the different things that we do. And she really needed to get her driving back because her husband had passed away and she lives alone. And she was in bad shape.
I can relate to that.
Yeah. So, and part of it for her was learning more self-regulation about her stress level and what she could do and what she couldn't do. And she's flying now.
That's awesome.
Back on the trail.
That's really great.
Yeah.
Good. Well, we keep getting better one step at a time.
That's right.
I think when I first met you, I was hugging the wall around the classroom. I couldn't walk across the room. So we're all moving forward.
We are.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your knowledge and experience with us today.
You are welcome, and I hope to talk to you again.
Yeah, I hope so too. So if you have any comments or anything you want to share, you can put that below in the comment area. And thank you so much for watching. Bye.
Turn it around. I know there's more to me than the wreckage you see.
Hey guys, I hope you found my contribution towards this video useful and valuable, because now it's your turn. And what I want to do is I want to hear from you. And I want to keep all of our experiences, the science and the research about this topic regarding traumatic brain injury in one place. And that's going to be in the comment section below on the YouTube channel. So what I would love is I would love for you to go to the YouTube channel itself, not the Facebook page, but the YouTube channel, so they're all kept in one place. And tell us your experience regarding this topic. Was it helpful for you? Was it not helpful for you? And if you have any science or any research regarding this topic, I would love for you to post the links there too. So together we can raise our voices for traumatic brain injury awareness and educate the professionals that are helping us. Together, we can do this. So thank you so much for being my partner, and thank you so much for putting your valuable contribution to this project.